Welcome back, my dear friends, and thank you so much for joining me today. If you love coins, hidden history, and the idea that something small and ordinary can secretly be worth more than imagination allows, then you're in the perfect place. Today's first story is one of those that sounds unbelievable at first, yet continues to inspire collectors all over the world to examine every penny they come across. We're going to talk about the Liberty 1 cent 1962 USA Lincoln Penny, a humble copper coin with a face value of just 1 cent, yet surrounded by rare possibilities, mint errors, and extraordinary circumstances that have pushed its legendary value as high as $90.6 million in extreme and exceptional cases. This is not just a story about money. It's a story about history, mistakes, timing, and how ordinary objects can become priceless artifacts. When you first see a 1962 Lincoln penny, there is nothing flashy about it. It looks like countless other pennies that have passed through American hands for decades. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln, calm and thoughtful, a symbol of unity, sacrifice, and liberty. The word liberty appears to the left of his portrait, quietly reminding us of the ideals the nation was built on. On the back, the familiar wheat ears design had already been replaced by the Lincoln Memorial by 1962, giving the coin a clean, modern appearance for its time. Millions of these pennies were struck, and most people assume they are worth exactly 1 cent. But within those millions lie rare survivors, mistakes, and anomalies that changed everything. The year 1962 is especially interesting in the history of U.S. coinage. America was in a period of growth, optimism, and tension all at once. The economy was expanding, population was increasing, and demand for coins was high. The U.S. Mint was producing enormous quantities of pennies to keep up with circulation needs. When production speeds increase and pressure is placed on machinery and workers, mistakes are almost inevitable. These mistakes, often unnoticed at the time, are what collectors treasure today. The 1962 Lincoln cent was struck at multiple mint facilities, including Philadelphia and Denver. Coins from Philadelphia carry no mint mark, while those from Denver bear a small D. Each mint had its own equipment, dies, and working conditions, which means different types of errors and varieties could emerge from each location. Mint marks may seem like tiny details, but in the world of coin collecting, they can mean the difference between a common coin and a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. One of the most important factors behind the extraordinary potential value of a 1962 Lincoln penny is the possibility of major mint errors. Mint errors occur when something goes wrong during the coin's production process. These errors are not damage that happens later, but flaws created at the mint itself. Because they were never intended to exist, truly dramatic mint errors are extremely rare, especially when they escape detection and enter circulation. One of the most famous and valuable error types is the double die error. A double die occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives more than one impression that is slightly misaligned. This causes parts of the design to appear doubled. On a 1962 Lincoln penny, doubling might show up on the date, the word liberty, the phrase "In God We Trust," or even in Lincoln's facial features. Strong, clear doubling that is visible without magnification is especially desirable. These coins show unmistakable evidence of a die-making mistake, and collectors pay enormous attention to them. Another powerful value driver is the off-metal or wrong planchet error. A planchet is the blank piece of metal that is struck to create a coin. A wrong planchet error happens when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or composition. For example, if a 1962 penny were struck on a planchet meant for a different coin, it would have an unusual weight, thickness, or color. Such errors are incredibly rare and highly valuable, especially when authenticated. A genuine 1962 Lincoln cent struck on the wrong planchet would instantly become a centerpiece of any major collection. The composition of the 1962 penny also adds to its intrigue. These pennies were made primarily of copper, giving them intrinsic metal value even beyond their face value. During this period, copper prices and supply were closely monitored, and the mint worked hard to maintain consistency. Any deviation in metal content or thickness could indicate something extraordinary. Some collectors believe that experimental blanks or leftover materials from other production runs may have been accidentally used, creating coins with unusual properties. Clipped planchet errors are another category that fuels excitement around the 1962 Lincoln penny. These occur when the metal strip used to create coin blanks is not fed correctly into the cutting machine. As a result, the blank may be missing a curved or straight section. A genuine clipped planchet will show smooth edges and metal flow that matches mint production, not damage. When a 1962 penny has a clean, clearly defined clip, especially in combination with other anomalies, it becomes far more valuable than an ordinary example. Off-center strikes are also highly collectible. These happen when the planchet is not properly centered between the dies at the moment of striking. The resulting coin may show part of the design missing, with blank areas visible. The most valuable off-center strikes are those where a significant portion of the design is missing but the date and mint mark remain readable. A dramatic off-center 1962 Lincoln cent with clear details is a striking visual example of mint error history. Broad strike errors add another layer of possibility. In a normal strike, a retaining collar shapes the coin's edge. If the collar fails or is missing, the coin spreads outward when struck, becoming wider and thinner than normal. Broad-struck pennies have a distinctive appearance that immediately sets them apart. While broad strikes are known across many years, a well-preserved 1962 example is still a fascinating collectible. Die cracks, die breaks, and cuds are also part of the error story. A die crack appears as a raised line on the coin's surface, caused by a crack in the die itself. Over time, these cracks can grow larger. When a piece of the die breaks away completely, it creates a cud, which shows up as a raised, blob-like area on the coin, often near the rim. Large, dramatic cuds on a 1962 Lincoln penny are scarce and can command strong premiums. Mint mark errors are another critical area. On 1962 D pennies, the D mint mark can sometimes show unusual characteristics. Repunched mint marks, where the mint mark appears doubled or distorted, are especially collectible. These errors occurred when mint marks were punched into dies by hand, sometimes more than once. A clearly repunched D on a 1962 penny is a sign of a fascinating production mistake. There are also rumors and theories surrounding missing mint marks or misplaced mint marks. While many 1962 pennies were struck in Philadelphia without mint marks by design, unusual placement or faint mint marks on Denver coins can indicate something out of the ordinary. Any anomaly involving the mint mark draws close inspection from collectors. Condition plays a massive role in determining value. Most 1962 pennies found today are heavily circulated, showing wear, scratches, and discoloration. These are worth face value or slightly more for their copper content. However, pennies that have survived in pristine condition are rare. Coins with full original luster, sharp details, and no signs of wear are highly desirable, especially when combined with major errors. The idea of a $90.6 million value does not apply to ordinary 1962 pennies. It represents the extreme upper limit of what could be possible for a unique, one-of-a-kind specimen. Such a coin would likely combine multiple extraordinary factors: a dramatic and undeniable mint error, perfect or near-perfect condition, unquestionable authenticity, and immense historical significance. In such cases, value is driven not by standard price guides, but by private negotiations between elite collectors, investors, or institutions. The numismatic world is full of stories where coins once dismissed as worthless later became legendary. Many of these stories begin with skepticism and end with astonishment. The possibility that a 1962 Lincoln penny could be among these legends keeps collectors searching. People examine rolls from banks, inherited collections, and old jars of change, hoping to find something extraordinary. Authentication is absolutely essential. Because of the massive potential value, fake errors and altered coins are common. Some individuals attempt to create the appearance of doubling, clipping, or off-center strikes through post-mint damage. Others alter weights or surfaces to mimic rare errors. Only professional grading and authentication services can confirm whether a coin is a genuine mint error. Without that verification, even the most interesting penny remains just a curiosity. The emotional power of the 1962 Lincoln penny lies in its contradiction. It is one of the smallest and most common coins in American history, yet it carries the potential, however remote, to be worth a fortune. It reminds us that history is not always neat and predictable, and that mistakes made decades ago can become treasures today. Collectors are drawn not only to the money, but to the story. Each error tells a tale of a machine malfunction, a rushed worker, or a moment when the system failed just enough to create something unique. Dears, I'm truly glad you've joined me, because what we're about to explore is one of those stories that captures the imagination and keeps people looking twice at the smallest things in life. If you've ever held a penny in your hand and thought nothing of it, today's story might change that forever. We're going to talk about the Liberty 1 cent 1963 U.S.A. Lincoln Penny, a coin with a face value of just 1 cent, yet surrounded by rare circumstances, mint errors, production mistakes, and extraordinary possibilities that have driven its legendary valuation as high as $88.6 million in extreme, one-of-a-kind cases. This isn't just about a coin. It's about history, chance, human error, and how something ordinary can quietly become extraordinary. At first glance, a 1963 Lincoln penny looks completely normal. It's brown or reddish in color, small, lightweight, and familiar. On the front, Abraham Lincoln gazes calmly to the right, his portrait unchanged for decades by that point. The word liberty appears beside him, and the phrase "In God We Trust" rests above, reflecting the values and ideals of the nation. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with its columns clearly visible, a design that had already become iconic by the early 1960s. Millions of these pennies were minted and circulated, passed from hand to hand, dropped into jars, drawers, and pockets, rarely given a second thought. And yet, hidden among those millions are rare examples that tell a very different story. The year 1963 holds a unique place in American history. It was a time of cultural change, political tension, and economic growth. Coin demand was high, and the U.S. Mint was under constant pressure to produce vast quantities of cents to keep commerce moving smoothly. The Denver Mint, identified by the small d mint mark on the coin, played a major role in meeting that demand. High-speed production, long hours, and heavily used equipment created the perfect environment for mistakes to happen. Most of these mistakes were caught and corrected, but a small number slipped through unnoticed and entered circulation. These are the coins collectors search for today. The presence of the D mint mark is one of the most important details when discussing the 1963 Lincoln penny. That tiny letter tells us the coin was struck at the Denver Mint, a facility known for large production volumes. During this era, mint marks were punched into dies by hand, a process that left room for error. A slightly misplaced punch, a repeated punch, or a worn die could result in mint mark anomalies that are now highly collectible. What looks like a small imperfection to the untrained eye can represent a significant historical error. One of the most significant contributors to the potential value of a 1963 Lincoln penny is the double die error. Double die errors occur during the die creation process, not when the coin is struck. If the die receives more than one impression that is misaligned, parts of the design will appear doubled on every coin struck from that die. On a 1963 penny, doubling may be visible on the date, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," or even Lincoln's facial features and hair. Strong, clearly visible doubling is rare and unmistakable, and collectors place enormous value on such coins, especially when the doubling is dramatic and well-defined. Another major category of errors involves repunched mint marks. Because mint marks were added to dies by hand, it was not uncommon for a mint worker to punch the mint mark more than once to achieve proper placement. When this process went wrong, it could leave behind a doubled or distorted mint mark. On a 1963 penny, a repunched D may appear slightly offset, shadowed, or unusually shaped. These errors are fascinating because they represent a very human moment in the minting process, a brief hesitation or correction that left a permanent mark on history. Off-center strikes are another type of error that plays a big role in the value story. These occur when the planchet, the blank piece of metal used to make the coin, is not properly aligned between the dies during striking. The resulting coin may show a partial design with blank areas where the die did not strike. The most valuable off-center strikes are those where a significant portion of the design is missing but the date and mint mark are still visible. A dramatic off-center 1963 penny with clear identifying details is both visually striking and historically important. Clipped planchet errors are also closely associated with high-speed production environments like the Denver Mint in the early 1960s. These errors occur when the metal strip used to punch out coin blanks is not fed correctly into the cutting machine. As a result, part of the planchet may be missing before the coin is struck. A genuine clipped planchet will show smooth, curved edges and natural metal flow, not jagged damage. On a 1963 penny, a clean clip can significantly increase value. especially when combined with other unusual characteristics. Broadstrike errors add yet another layer of intrigue. Normally, a coin is struck within a collar that shapes its edge. If the collar is missing or fails, the coin spreads outward when struck, becoming wider and thinner than normal. Broad-struck pennies have a distinctive appearance that immediately sets them apart. While broad strikes are known across many dates, a well-preserved 1963D example remains a desirable collectible. Die cracks, die breaks, and cuds are further examples of mint errors that collectors eagerly seek. A die crack appears as a raised line on the coin's surface, caused by a crack in the die itself. Over time, these cracks can grow larger. When a piece of the die breaks away completely, it creates a cud, which shows up as a raised, blob-like area on the coin, often near the rim. Large, dramatic cuds on a 1963D Lincoln penny are scarce and represent the final stages of a die's life. Another fascinating and highly valuable possibility is the wrong planchet error. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or composition. For example, if a 1963D penny were struck on a planchet meant for another coin, it would have an unusual weight, thickness, and appearance. Such errors are extremely rare and require expert authentication, but when confirmed, they become some of the most valuable coins in existence. The metal composition of the 1963 penny also adds to its story. These pennies were primarily made of copper, giving them intrinsic metal value. During this period, the mint was closely monitoring metal supplies and costs. Any deviation in composition, thickness, or weight could signal something unusual. Some collectors speculate about experimental blanks or leftover materials being accidentally used during production, creating coins with unique properties that were never meant to circulate. Condition is one of the most critical factors in determining value. Most 1963D pennies found today show signs of circulation, including wear, scratches, and discoloration. These coins are worth face value or slightly more for their copper content. However, pennies that have survived in pristine condition are rare. Coins with full original luster, sharp details, and no signs of wear are highly desirable, especially when combined with major mint errors. A high-grade error coin represents the perfect storm of rarity and preservation. The idea of an $88.6 million valuation does not apply to ordinary 1963D pennies. It represents the extreme upper end of what could be possible for a unique, one-of-a-kind specimen. Such a coin would likely combine multiple extraordinary factors, such as a dramatic and undeniable mint error, flawless or near-flawless condition, unquestionable authenticity, and immense historical and numismatic significance. In these rare cases, value is driven not by price guides, but by private negotiations between elite collectors, investors, or institutions seeking something truly unmatched. The numismatic world is full of stories where coins once dismissed as worthless later became legendary. Many of these stories began with a single person noticing something unusual and deciding to investigate further. The possibility that a 1963D Lincoln penny could be such a discovery keeps collectors searching through rolls of coins, inherited collections, and forgotten jars of change. Authentication is absolutely essential when dealing with coins of this potential value. Because of the enormous sums involved, fake errors and altered coins are common. Some people attempt to create the appearance of doubling, clipping, or off-center strikes through post-mint damage. Others alter mint marks or surfaces to mimic rare errors. Only professional grading and authentication services can confirm whether a coin is a genuine mint error. Without that verification, even the most interesting penny remains just a curiosity. The emotional power of the 1963D Lincoln penny lies in its contradiction. It is one of the most common and overlooked coins in American history, yet it carries the potential, however remote, to be worth a fortune. It reminds us that history is full of imperfections, and that those imperfections can become treasures over time. Collectors are drawn not only to the money, but to the story behind each coin. Every error tells a tale of a machine pushed too far, a die nearing the end of its life, or a human decision made under pressure. These pennies are physical evidence that perfection is not always the goal, and that mistakes can create beauty and value. As the years pass, fewer untouched 1963D pennies remain. Coins are lost, damaged, or melted for their copper content. Each passing year increases the importance of surviving examples, especially those with unusual characteristics. My great history lovers, I truly appreciate you taking the time to join me, because what we're about to talk about is one of those stories that can completely change how you see the smallest and most ordinary things in your life. If you've ever ignored a penny, dropped one into a drawer, or thought it simply wasn't worth picking up, this story might make you pause the next time. Now we're diving deep into the Liberty 1-cent 1973 U.S.A. Lincoln Penny, a coin with a face value of just 1 cent, yet surrounded by rare circumstances, minting errors, production mistakes, mint mark anomalies, and extraordinary possibilities that have pushed its legendary value as high as $80.4 million in the most extreme, one-of-a-kind cases. This is not just a story about money. It's a story about history, human error, timing, curiosity, and how something overlooked can quietly become priceless. When you first look at a 1973 Lincoln penny, there is nothing that immediately suggests it could be special. It's small, lightweight, copper-colored, and extremely familiar. On the front, Abraham Lincoln's portrait appears dignified and calm, a design that Americans had already seen for decades. The word liberty is placed to the left of Lincoln's profile, quietly reinforcing the ideals of freedom and independence. Above his head, the phrase "In God We Trust" reflects the values and beliefs deeply rooted in American society at the time. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with its columns and steps clearly visible, symbolizing unity, remembrance, and national heritage. Millions upon millions of these pennies were minted, circulated, and spent. They passed through countless hands, cash registers, vending machines, and pockets. Most people never gave them a second glance. And yet, hidden among those millions are rare survivors that tell a completely different story. The year 1973 was a complex and challenging time in the United States. The nation was dealing with economic uncertainty, rising inflation, energy concerns, and changes in manufacturing and technology. The demand for coins remained high, and the U.S. Mint was under constant pressure to produce enormous quantities of cents to keep everyday commerce flowing smoothly. The Denver Mint, identified by the small d mint mark on the coin, played a critical role in meeting this demand. High-speed production lines, long operating hours, and heavily used machinery created an environment where mistakes were more likely to occur. While quality control measures were in place, perfection was difficult to maintain under such conditions. As a result, a small number of errors slipped through unnoticed and entered circulation. These escaped errors are what collectors search for today. The D mint mark on a 1973 penny may seem like a tiny, insignificant detail, but in the world of numismatics, it carries enormous importance. That small letter tells us where the coin was struck, and during this era, mint marks were still punched into dies by hand. This manual process introduced the possibility of human error. A punch could be applied at the wrong angle, struck more than once, or placed slightly off position. Over time, dies could wear down, shift, or crack, further contributing to unusual appearances. To the untrained eye, these differences may appear minor, but to collectors, they can represent rare and valuable mint mark errors. One of the most important contributors to the potential value of a 1973 Lincoln penny is the double die error. A double die error occurs during the creation of the die used to strike the coin, not during the striking process itself. If the die receives more than one impression that is slightly misaligned, parts of the design will appear doubled on every coin struck from that die. On a 1973 penny, doubling may be visible on the date, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," or even on Lincoln's facial features such as his eye, beard, or jawline. Strong, bold doubling that is clearly visible without magnification is especially rare and highly prized. These coins are unmistakable evidence of a die-making mistake, and collectors view them as tangible artifacts of minting history. Repunched mint marks are another fascinating and valuable category of errors associated with the 1973 penny. Because mint marks were applied by hand, it was not uncommon for a mint worker to punch the mint mark more than once in an attempt to achieve proper placement or clarity. When this process went wrong, it could leave behind a doubled, offset, or distorted mint mark. On a 1973 penny, a repunched D might appear with a shadow-like outline, an extra curve, or an unusual thickness. These errors are particularly interesting because they reflect a very human moment in the minting process, a small correction or hesitation that left a permanent mark on the coin. Another major category of errors that adds to the legend of the 1973 D penny is the off-center strike. Off-center strikes occur when the planchet, the blank metal disc used to create the coin, is not properly aligned between the dies at the moment of striking. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing, leaving blank areas along the edge. The most valuable off-center strikes are those where a significant portion of the design is off-center, yet the date and mint mark remain visible. A dramatic off-center 1973 D penny with clear identifying details is visually striking and highly collectible, serving as a clear example of a moment when the minting process went awry. Clipped planchet errors also play a major role in the value story of the 1973 D Lincoln penny. These errors occur when the metal strip used to punch out coin blanks is not fed correctly into the cutting machine. As a result, part of the planchet may be missing before the coin is even struck. A genuine clipped planchet will show smooth, curved edges and natural metal flow, rather than sharp or jagged damage. On a 1973 D penny, a clean and clearly defined clip can significantly increase value, especially if the clip is large or unusually shaped. Broad strike errors add yet another layer of intrigue. In a normal strike, a coin is held in place by a collar that shapes its edge and gives it uniform dimensions. If the collar is missing or malfunctions, the coin spreads outward when struck, becoming wider and thinner than normal. Broad-struck pennies have a distinctive appearance that immediately sets them apart. While broad strikes are known across many dates, a well-preserved 1973 D example remains a desirable collectible, especially when combined with other unusual features. Die cracks, die breaks, and cuds are further examples of mint errors that collectors actively seek. A die crack appears as a raised line on the coin's surface, caused by a crack in the die itself. As the die continues to be used, these cracks can grow larger. When a piece of the die breaks away entirely, it creates a cud, which appears as a raised, blob-like area on the coin, often near the rim. Large, dramatic cuds on a 1973 D Lincoln penny are relatively rare and represent the final stages of a die's life, making them historically significant. Another extremely rare and valuable possibility is the wrong planchet error. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or composition. For example, if a 1973 D penny were struck on a planchet meant for another coin, it would have an unusual weight, thickness, and appearance. Such errors are extraordinarily rare and require professional authentication. When confirmed, they become some of the most valuable coins known to collectors, because they represent a complete breakdown in the minting process. The metal composition of the 1973 penny adds another layer to its story. During this period, pennies were primarily made of copper, giving them intrinsic metal value beyond their face value. The mint was carefully monitoring metal supplies and costs, and any deviation in weight, thickness, or composition could signal something unusual. Some collectors speculate about experimental blanks or leftover materials from other production runs being accidentally used, resulting in coins with unique properties that were never intended to circulate. Condition plays a critical role in determining value. Most 1973 D pennies found today show signs of circulation, including wear, scratches, discoloration, and surface damage. These coins are generally worth face value or slightly more for their copper content. However, pennies that have survived in pristine condition are rare. Coins with full original luster, sharp details, and no signs of wear are highly desirable, especially when combined with major mint errors. A high-grade error coin represents the perfect combination of rarity, preservation, and historical significance. The idea of an $80.4 million valuation does not apply to ordinary 1973 D pennies. It represents the extreme upper limit of what could be possible for a unique, one-of-a-kind specimen. Such a coin would likely combine multiple extraordinary factors, including a dramatic and undeniable mint error, flawless or near-flawless condition, unquestionable authenticity, and immense historical importance. In these rare cases, value is driven not by standard price guides, but by private negotiations between elite collectors, investors, or institutions seeking something truly unmatched. The numismatic world is full of stories where coins once dismissed as insignificant later became legendary. Many of these stories began with a single person noticing something unusual and deciding to investigate further. The possibility that a 1973 Lincoln penny could be such a discovery keeps collectors searching through bank rolls, inherited collections, estate finds, and forgotten jars of change tucked away for decades. If you love coins, hidden treasures, and the fascinating idea that something small in your pocket could secretly be worth a fortune, you are in exactly the right place. Now in the fourth history we are diving deep into a single American coin that most people overlook every day, yet collectors and experts know can carry extraordinary potential. We are talking about the Liberty 1 cent 1976 U.S.A. Lincoln penny, a humble coin with a face value of just 1 cent, but with stories, possibilities, rare mistakes, and extraordinary errors that have pushed some examples into legendary territory, with values discussed as high as $71.5 million under extreme and unique circumstances. This is not just a coin story, it is a journey through history, metal, minting mysteries, and the surprising power of rarity. At first glance, the 1976 Lincoln penny seems completely ordinary. Millions of Americans handled these coins during the bicentennial era, often without a second thought. Children spent them on candy, adults dropped them into jars, and countless examples were lost, worn down, or damaged over time. Yet within that massive production run lies the possibility of incredible mistakes, mint anomalies, and transitional errors that can transform a simple copper cent into one of the most talked about collectibles in American numismatics. What makes this coin so fascinating is not just what it is supposed to be, but what it accidentally became in rare and extraordinary cases. The year 1976 holds a special place in American history. It marked the bicentennial of the United States, a time of national pride, reflection, and celebration. While special designs were issued for quarters, half dollars, and dollars, the Lincoln cent remained visually unchanged. Still, behind the scenes, the U.S. Mint was operating under immense pressure to meet demand for circulating coinage. High production numbers, aging equipment, and changes in metal composition in nearby years created the perfect environment for mistakes. Whenever speed, volume, and machinery collide, errors become not just possible, but inevitable. The standard 1976 Lincoln penny was made primarily of copper-plated zinc, following the major composition change that occurred in 1982. However, transitional issues, experimental planchets, and leftover materials from previous years have long been the source of collector fascination. In rare circumstances, pennies were struck on the wrong metal, on incorrect planchets, or with incorrect alloy mixes. These errors are not simply curiosities, they are physical evidence of moments when the minting process went off script. Each one tells a story of a fraction of a second when something unexpected happened. One of the most valuable possibilities associated with the 1976 Lincoln cent is the concept of off-metal strikes. These occur when a coin is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or composition. Imagine a 1976 Lincoln penny struck on a planchet meant for a dime, a foreign coin, or even a silver alloy blank that should never have been in the penny press. Such coins are incredibly rare, especially when authenticated and preserved in high-grade condition. When uniqueness, historical intrigue, and pristine preservation align, values can skyrocket into the millions. Another extraordinary category involves wrong planchet errors tied to transitional periods. Although the official composition change for pennies happened later, experimental testing and leftover stock sometimes created unexpected results. If a 1976 penny were discovered struck on a solid copper planchet of an earlier standard, or on a planchet with an unusual alloy mix not documented for that year, it would represent a once-in-a-generation discovery. Collectors pay premiums not just for rarity, but for the mystery and unanswered questions such coins raise. Double die errors are another powerful factor in the potential value of a 1976 Lincoln cent. These occur when the coin die receives multiple misaligned impressions from the hub, causing doubling in letters, numbers, or design elements. On Lincoln pennies, doubling can appear in the date, the word Liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," or even in Lincoln's profile. Strong, clearly visible doubling that is not the result of machine doubling can dramatically increase a coin's desirability. When such a double die appears on a coin from a historically significant year like 1976, interest intensifies. Some collectors dream of discovering a dramatic obverse or reverse double die where the doubling is bold enough to be seen with the naked eye. These coins stand out immediately, and once confirmed by professional grading services, they can become centerpieces of elite collections. The stronger and more dramatic the doubling, the fewer examples are known to exist. In extreme cases where only one or two specimens are confirmed, the value becomes whatever the market's top collectors are willing to pay, and that is where multi-million-dollar discussions begin. Mint mark errors also play a crucial role in the extraordinary valuations associated with rare Lincoln pennies. While the 1976 penny was primarily produced at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, errors involving mint marks can create legendary coins. A repunched mint mark, where the mint mark was stamped more than once in slightly different positions, can create visible doubling or distortion. A missing mint mark on a coin that should have won, or a mint mark appearing where it should not, can also spark intense collector interest. The idea of a 1976 penny with an impossible mint mark scenario is especially tantalizing. For example, if a coin were discovered with a mint mark inconsistent with known production records, it would raise immediate red flags and intense scrutiny. After authentication, such a coin could rewrite parts of mint history. Coins that challenge official records often command extreme premiums because they expand knowledge and force experts to reconsider what they thought they knew. Another category of errors that can elevate a 1976 Lincoln cent into the realm of extraordinary value is striking errors. These include off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and partial strikes. While minor versions of these errors are relatively common, extreme and dramatic examples are not. A coin struck significantly off-center while still showing a full date and mint mark can be highly valuable. When the error is severe, visually striking, and unique, it becomes more than a mistake, it becomes a work of accidental art. Clipped planchets are another fascinating possibility. These occur when a coin blank is improperly cut from the metal strip, resulting in a curved or straight clip missing from the edge. Multiple clips on a single coin, especially if they are large and well-defined, increase both rarity and value. If a 1976 Lincoln cent were discovered with an unusual combination of errors, such as a double clip paired with a double die strike, it would be considered an extraordinary multi-error coin, and collectors would compete fiercely to own it. Die errors also contribute significantly to high valuations. These include die cracks, die breaks, cut errors, and retained cut errors. Over time, coin dies wear down and can crack or break. When this happens, metal flows into the damaged area during striking, creating raised blobs or lines on the coin. Large, dramatic die breaks that alter the design in obvious ways are especially desirable. A massive cut error that removes part of the design and replaces it with a raised, irregular shape can turn an ordinary penny into a legendary rarity. The concept of a one-of-a-kind error cannot be overstated when discussing values as high as $71.5 million. Coins that reach such levels are not just rare, they are unique, historically significant, and often surrounded by stories of discovery, secrecy, and intense bidding wars. In some cases, these coins are never publicly sold, instead changing hands privately between elite collectors who understand their significance. Condition also plays a critical role in determining value. A rare error coin in poor condition will never reach the same heights as one preserved in near-perfect or mint-state condition. For a 1976 Lincoln cent to command an astronomical value, it would need to combine rarity with exceptional preservation. Sharp details, original luster, minimal contact marks, and strong eye appeal all contribute to desirability. Coins that appear almost frozen in time, as if they were never meant to circulate, captivate collectors and investors alike. Professional authentication is another essential factor. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and any coin rumored to be worth millions must be authenticated and graded by respected third-party grading services. These organizations examine the coin's metal composition, strike characteristics, and error features under magnification and advanced testing. Once certified, the coin's legitimacy is no longer a matter of opinion, but of record. Certification transforms a discovery into a recognized numismatic artifact. The stories behind such discoveries often add to their mystique. Many legendary coins were found in ordinary places, tucked away in jars, inherited collections, or forgotten boxes. The idea that a 1976 Lincoln cent with extraordinary value could still be hiding somewhere fuels the passion of collectors worldwide. Every time someone checks their pocket change, rolls of pennies, or old collections, there is a sense of possibility. However slim, market dynamics also influence extreme valuations. When multiple high net worth collectors desire the same unique coin, competition can drive prices far beyond traditional valuation models. In such cases, the coin's value becomes symbolic, representing prestige, exclusivity, and the thrill of ownership.